Hello, SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, and this will be another episode in this series focusing on 33 and the symbolic, but especially the measurement, the metrological aspects of it and how important it is in both the ancient and the modern world. So this one will be focusing on city and town plans. Recap, I began with looking at 33 feet, 33, how it applies to, well, especially Scottish Rite Freemasonry, 33 degrees, the house of a temple, 33 columns of 33 feet high, the former columns of the US Capitol building, now in the National Arboretum, 33 feet high, 33 steps up the Capitol building, Scottish Rite Cathedral in Indianapolis, 330 feet long, or 5 chain, as we'll talk about, one Gunter's chain, or a Surveyor chain of 66 feet, which is 33 times 2, but also in the Tyler's room, so 33 feet high, wide and long. Denver Airport, 3,300 feet, the addition to it, and of course this strong reference back to especially Freemasons now, but the emphasis of this episode will be on city and town plan. So unless, if you've played SimCity, for instance, you understand the importance of laying out your roads and your town plan perfectly, or at least as best you can, because it will have a big influence on the way things run. Too far apart, things won't work well. You need a fire station, a hospital, police force, centrally organised, but also so it can disperse out and reach areas quickly, or so that people on the outskirts can travel in. And so city planning is very, very important. That begins with the road. So before the architecture of a temple or a cathedral or a parliamentary building, Congress building can be built, you need to get your city plan right. These are just some different designs, and they'll often, so I've got a selection here. This would be Canberra, which is Australia's version of Washington DC. We see the Washington DC grid from the Capitol building up towards the White House, and the grid in there at Brasilia, capital of Brazil. So just like Washington and Canberra and Astana, the town plan is very important, or Karlsruhe in Germany. So those are just some examples. So town plans can be very, very strongly. However, there is an undercurrent which is passed through ancient times and still being used now. Previous episode again about the navigation. This will be an important feature. Direction, alignment. Navigation is not just a physical aspect. It also can be applied to a spiritual sense as well. But the importance of 33 in ancient mapping systems, still in cathedrals now, such as St. Paul's, already showed Karlsruhe with 32 spokes around the 33rd core, an example of town planning in the design. But now let's look at the measurement systems connected in there. So a town plan, a city plan, whether it was back in the day or still now, where you live, where you walk, where you drive, where you work, the way you move around, the way you communicate, the way you engage with people is very strongly influenced by the city or the town plan. If you have all winding, narrow alleyways, it leads to a more, insulated type communities. But if you have a more open grid system, it changes the nature of the city. It changes, in a practical sense, the way that the economy and commerce work, but it also affects the way that people interact with one another. So, for instance, when you have these first big main streets as opposed to the tight little alleyways, people can now promenade as they did in the day, where you go out in your Sunday best and you just walk up and down the street and engage and window shop and talk with people. But this also applies to transport and the efficiency or inefficiency of transport. Really, the importance of the city plan cannot be underestimated. The way your town is laid out will regulate the way that the architecture is laid out. Your lifestyle begins with the city plan. But also, unlike architecture or even people who come and go, the city plan is almost immortal. And by that, if there was a soundtrack to this, I think there's that Stand by that band R.E.M. The lyrics, stand in the place where you live, now face north, think about direction, wonder why you haven't Now, I think important question, stand in the place where you work, now face west, think about the place where you live, wonder why you haven't before. This is interesting in regards to this, because if you know, until you really start thinking about city plans and the connections to them, landscape, architecture, all the elements which emerge from there. If you know, with a wide street, you can have avenue of trees. You cannot have this with narrow streets or winding streets. You can't see very far, so you have a more of a guarded view. You're always looking around the next corner. But with a wide avenue like this, everything is visible before you, and it creates a better atmosphere for living as well. So it's another aspect of the importance of the architecture, the design, the landscape created by the city or the town plan. So as regards to the immortality, if you want to say, that the bones of a city, of a town, is its town plan. And this is World War II, the bombing in Japan. There's not much left, but the city plan remains. So war won't really destroy the city plan, like here in Australia or the Californian wildfires. Everything else is wiped out, but the city plan remains to be rebuilt. Even the Japanese tsunami. So, you know, you had a civilization at work, along comes a flood, but the city plan, it remains there. That's how strong, how important it is. The significance of it can at least go back to Old Kingdom Egypt and the stretching the cord ceremony, where they would align the temple, which also included marking out the corners of the temple. So the city or the temple plan is essentially, it is the same thing. It's just a different way to think about it, because a temple plan is not just really the building, it's the city which is built around it. So it is very ancient, very important. Again, back to the Old Kingdom, right up to the last days of Egypt, well recorded. Also, some keys in regards to reading this plan is one that I've mentioned very often, is the Salamis stone. Mark Wilson-Jones, I think this is one of the big finds of in terms of it, well, not just metrology, but understanding ancient knowledge. Now, for instance, the Doric Ionic common foot is, the Salamis stone is a conversion tool. Also, the perimeter marks out the Samian measure. So you actually have at least 4 measures. Now, if you include well, it's square root of 5 Egyptian royal cubits wide, but Doric and Ionic, okay, standard tracing board. You know, you have your Doric and your Ionic column, which are schools of architecture, but they're also measurement systems, also music systems. But this will be one of the main tools, once again, in understanding what's going on here. So, origins of city plans. The really, really old towns and cities didn't even have streets. They were just houses all pushed up against one another. People would walk across the roofs. But in places like Mohenjo-Daro, we see the beginning of the first city plan, but also a standardized street width of 33 feet is Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, and others in that civilization. One Mohenjo-Daro foot is 1.1 feet, so the standard Mohenjo-Daro streets, lanes, you will see 30 Mohenjo-Daro or 33 modern feet in there. So, for instance, the House of the Temple, Washington, headquarters of 33-degree Freemasons in US, 33 columns, 33 feet high. So its total is 1,089 feet, 66 rods. And again, one Mohenjo-Daro foot is, or one Saxon foot, which was the North European foot up until the modern English foot, is 1.1 feet. So that's 33 feet is 30 Saxon feet or 30 Mohenjo-Daro feet. And just so it works out, that 330 Saxon yards is the total height, combined height of all of the 33 feet high columns. Now, let's be looking at Williamsburg in Virginia. The capital is pretty much going to be the capital of America before the Revolutionary War and that type of stuff happened. But we see connections through other cities, but that's sort of a revised plan. But let's go back to the very beginning. This is Theodore Bland, 1699. Williamsburg, the original street plan design. Goes back to a different part of history. And what do we have? We have the Duke of Gloucester Street. So the main street is 5,280 feet or 1 mile long. and it is 99 feet wide. Well, 99 feet is 33 yards. 1 mile, 5,280 feet, equals 3,300 Doric cubits. So back to the Masonic tracing board and the much, much older Salamis stone, which if you apply this to the Parthenon and other ancient temples, you find there's actually a storm of beautiful coincidence of harmonic, beautiful astronomical geometric. But this, and this was only discovered in the last 20 years, the Salamis stone and the importance of it. Mark Wilson Jones, University of Bath, but again, I think it's one of a really important finds. So same with 33rd Street subway, New York City. Older design of a map of New York, back then New Amsterdam under Dutch control. We have that 32 around the 33rd Portola mapping system, just like in the Perrth map. The old city was not very well designed, so that's the old wall. That's where Wall Street comes from, where the colony was on the south tip. But then we have the Governor Morris plan, 1807, 1811, and the standard street block of the 1811 plan was 900 feet. Well, that's nice stuff going on there, but it's also 264 feet wide. That's 4 chain, 4 times 66, or 8 times 33. That just converts to 330 Doric span, or 3,300 ionic inches. Once again, tracing boards and the Salamis stone, this ancient conversion tool. Portland, Oregon's another example because its blocks are 264 by 264 feet. That, once again, 4 chain, Gunter's chain. Same thing, you get 330 Doric span, 3,300 ionic inches. Once again, Houston, Texas, well, that's 5 by 5 chain is one of the earliest standard blocks at 330 feet by 330. And also, I'll put the link to this video. I think it's a great short video to look at Gunter's chain and the aspects of it. But he's talking about Vancouver, and Gunter's chain was a standard. The roads around Vancouver are either 1 chain or 1.5 chain, 99 feet, 33 yards. The block's 264 feet again, or 528 feet. So once again, 330 Doric cubits long. If they're at 8 chain, because all 6 and 8 chain, 528 feet, 1/10 of a mile, or 4 chains wide being the standard, that's again 330 Doric span, 3,300 ionic inches, just like we saw in Portland and New York and again these other places. So also in Vancouver, the house frontages of the blocks of land are either 1/2 or 1 chain wide, so either 33 or 66 feet, this being another point to it. Now the townships, the greater blocks were 6 miles wide. 6 miles is 33,000 ionic feet, once again. Raleigh, North Carolina, and we see there the main streets are 99 feet, and all others are 66 feet, or 1 Gunter's chain. And again, 33 feet, 33 yards. Now, Australia, another perfect example. Governor Lachlan Macquarie, he redesigned a lot of Sydney, he redesigned a lot of Parramatta, he founded Liverpool, and he also founded these 5 townships to the north of Sydney. They are at, with the exception of Windsor, they are all at 8 by 12 chain, Windsor being 5 by 12, so we have 3, 4, 5 triangles in this plan, so it's 2 to 3 vesica, or it's 5 to 12, which is the second Pythagorean triplet, 5, 12, 13, and, well, 5 chains, 330 feet, 8 chains, 528 feet, or 330 Doric cubits. And again, Mason and the Salamis stone, and even the tame biographies of Lachlan Macquarie, a conscientious Freemason. We could go on. So, okay, Newtown, and connections. Okay, I'll add on a little part to this. Hold a sec. Alright, so some examples were in Sydney. Now, of the major cities, I'm not including Brisbane, Hobart, down here, Brisbane or Darwin, because they just reflect the same method. But so we have Melbourne, Adelaide, and Perth. So apart from Sydney, we have the three most important cities here in Australia. And firstly, let's start with Perth. Now, here's the 1829 layout for the original Perth here, and also we have the design 1766 for Newtown in Edinburgh in Scotland. Now, Newtown was now an old town in Edinburgh, but at that time we had industrialisation, the Enclosures Act, so had a lot of people coming from the countryside to the city, but we also had the development of the city, so a lot more professionals. And so all across the world, it was basically called the New Town movement, where we're having new towns added outside the old city walls. And they tended to be now, instead of the old winding paths, I have the grid system. But also interesting in regards to Newtown and the similarities to Perth. Geoffrey Bolton used this as an example, but Grand Lodge of Scotland and James Galooly points out the reference point of this is Newtown, Edinburgh. Reference points, distance, and then what we have is a result is 3.1412, almost a value of pi, and that all of the builders were masons to a man. So again, this nice number connection with city plans, but let's stick with 33. So chains, and this will be, again, you'll see old maps, new maps would have it too, but these not the printed ones, where we have the scale, and what we have is St. George's Terrace, the main street, 99 yards wide. Sorry, I've got that backwards. 99 feet wide or 99 yards wide, so that's a typo there. We're going to go backwards. Okay, but the length 1.5 miles or 7,920 feet. The diameter of the Earth 7,920 feet, which is 33,000 ionic palms. So another connection, again, the Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, or common as well, because the Salamis stone not only has these ancient measures, it also includes the allegedly modern or common foot, English foot. Adelaide was another state capital. Here we see the plan, scale of chains, and so here's a graphic I just pulled off Wikipedia, but that shows how each street is 132 feet, or 2 chains, 66 times 2, 1 chain, 66 feet, 99 feet or 33 yards, 99 feet, 33 yards, 99 feet, 33 yards. So that's again built into the city plan of Adelaide. Also, there are 4 parks around the 5th century one, and there were 700 allotments made. And so the 5 public squares together are 32 of the allotments, and basically it forms the centre, so it's a nice connection, 32, 33. Basically the second city, Sydney versus Melbourne, but in terms of cultural, financial, that type of importance, Sydney versus Melbourne. But what we have Melbourne, the 1837 Hoddle Plan, and some, eventually they settled on the main streets being 33 yards or 99 feet wide, with alleyways, laneways between the blocks of 33 feet. So we have 33 yards, 33 feet, and that's the Adelaide plan. So I could do more, but if you just go back, so 33 feet, the multiple references to it, the connections to ancient, the esoteric, occult organizations carrying on this ancient tradition, so embedded in architecture, which is so embedded in weights and measures, and whether it's a temple or a city, you have to build it on a city plan, and that these, again, specific set of numbers as in a measurement, but also in a symbolic sense, and these applications to mapping systems, for instance, and how often they pop up, and again to the importance of standard street width. So I didn't look up this. I would guess that that's 66 feet wide street, and you'd have 12 foot sidewalks or public or footpaths on either side with a 42-foot carriageway. So because back then carriages would be pretty much a standard width, and so you'd have if your lane or your street or your road was of the proper width, then you could have a standardized sidewalk and the same number of cars going, because if all of a sudden your street's narrow, it's a bottleneck. So it's practical applications to it. But as with the rest of this series, we've seen before the aspects of it. Again, the city plan is it's almost impossible to destroy. You really have to either like completely liquefy the city in some sort of apocalyptic earthquake, or bury it to destroy the city plan. Fire can't do it, flood can't do it, even war can't do it. And again, it's this ancient motif, so, well, yeah, the aspects of it, just listing them would go on forever. So ancient units of measure, modern temples, modern street plans, the importance of 33 feet, and again, crossing different times and traditions. And it's pretty much all based around the Gunter's chain of 66 feet, or the Rathbone chain is sometimes called of 33 feet, but they're all divisions of 33, and it just is really, I've only shown here Canada, Australia, or America, because they were colonies, so it was the city was built from scratch. So unlike London or Paris or Rome, where later there was efforts to build long straight avenues and so forth, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and America, we had cities where from the very get-go they could be designed with not only a street plan but a national plan from the very onset. So it's this is why especially Australia or America or Canada so important in regards to this ancient tradition, because we see them beginning in 15, 16, 17 up to 1800s, and this between the truly modern era and the ancient traditions, because up until the 14th, 15th century we were still living in the ancient world. It's not ancient by years, but all the technology, the books were ancient. So the ancient world technologically, literature, that type of thing, really didn't end until that long ago. It really was with the Renaissance, and then with the Industrial Revolution that it really come to an end and we began the modern era. But street plans, these are just some examples, and again you'll always find, for instance, 108, 144 being built into this block, and the crossover between, let's call them the Masonic 33 base numbers and the harmonic Pythagorean tuning numbers. Very lovely links, especially music, geometry, astronomy, arithmetic, and the knowledge of the ancients passed down and recorded in examples such as the Salamis stone, which you can apply to the Parthenon. For instance, the Parthenon, the columns are 48 common feet, or English feet high, which is 45 Doric or 50 Ionic. So this stone actually has applications to ancient structures, and it's a Greek era, but you'll find that they will actually blend into even much older units of measurement, much older, part of an extended tradition. So street plans, 33, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, and this tradition of information buried in Hermeticism, as in Hermes or Mercury or Thoth or Chesed, guides and goddesses of weights and measure, Nuar and Fusi, etc., compass and square, very, very ancient. And with that, hope you enjoyed. I'll put a few links in the description, and I'll add this to the 33 playlist. Cheers.